You are now in tune with
Mamba Radio.
Alright, what up, everybody? Thank you for tuning into Brown Mamba Radio. For those who don't know, my name is Jackson, and today is the big day, and the NBA is finally here, so that only means one thing. It's time for the Brown Mamba official NBA preview, where I will be looking at all 30, yes, all 30 of the NBA teams and trying to figure out how they'll do this season. For those of you who are new to the program, I'll be looking at a few different things in no particular order. I'll be taking a look at how each team did last season and, like what their record was, if they made the playoffs, how they did in the playoffs, and so and so, stuff like that. Who's in and who's out, whether it's through free agency, by trading, through the draft, retirement, whatever. I'll be looking at who's new and who's out for each team, and I'll be looking at their projected starting five and the rest of their rotation. Some team storylines from what people are talking about from each team going into the season. Vegas' over-under, which is going to be based on the Las Vegas Westgate Sportsbook opening over-under, not the updated ones. They're opening over-under, and best case scenario for how the team does, worst case scenario for how the team does, and I'll also have one big question that I have for each team. And these will be broken up into two different episodes, one for the East and one for the West. This episode will be focusing on the Eastern Conference, so if you want to hear about how I think the Western Conference will do, go ahead and look for that episode. It is up at the same time this one goes up, so it will be available on Brown Mamba Radio, wherever you listen to your podcast, so find the Western Conference one there. But again, this episode will be focusing on the Eastern Conference, which will be drastically different, to say the least. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last, few months or so. LeBron James is no longer on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And that, like I said, will drastically affect the Eastern Conference this year. No LeBron means that there's going to be about, sorry Cavs fans, there's going to be about an extra 15 to 20 wins for every other team to get. And that also means no LeBron on the Cavs, and sorry Cavs fans, but that probably means someone else will win the East. As we all know that LeBron, during his time with both the Cavs and the Heat, has gone to the NBA Finals, I think 8 straight times, which is just crazy to think about if you really take a look back and think about that. But that means that someone else is probably going to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals, and you better believe all these different teams who have been tired of LeBron beating their ass every year in and year out are going to be hungry for that top spot in the East. And like I said, it's going to probably be someone else. Who it's going to be? Let's take a look at the teams, try to figure it out. Starting with a team that I'm pretty sure we know it won't be, and that's the Atlanta Hawks, who last season were dead last in the East with a record of 24-58, and they look to be picking up where they left off this season. And it seems like they're going to be in full-on tank rebuild mode. It's going to be tough times for the Hawks fans, and I'm sorry. Hopefully they're ready for it. Based on some of the moves that they made, like I said, it looks like that's the way that they're heading. They got rid of head coach Mike Budenholzer, who was not having any of that shit and not ready to tank. Had too much pride to do something like that. So he left. Excuse me. They brought in Lloyd Pierce, who, I'll be honest, I know nothing about. Only thing that I have here in my notes is that he was an assistant coach on the Sixers. So he has plenty of experience in tanking and rebuilding. So, like I said, they are trusting this process, I guess. We'll have to wait and see if it ends up like the Sixers process did. But, they not only did Mike Budenholzer leave, but they also traded away Mike Muscala to the Sixers, ironically. And they also brought in Jeremy Lin, Vince Carter, and Alex Len. Like I said, fully embracing tank mode. And, the big name that they got in the draft this year, controversially, to say the least, was the young point guard out of Oklahoma, Trae Young, who I'm sure is, like, again, we all know, the Hawks made that trade with the Mavericks to trade up in order to get Trae Young, but they also traded away the opportunity to get Luka Doncic, who looks like he's going to be pretty good, and that's I guess we'll go right to it. That's going to be the biggest question I have for this team is, will they regret the Trae Young for Luka Doncic trade? It's a little unfair, I know, to put a lot of as much pressure as, not just myself is doing, but a lot of these other media outlets are doing on Trae Young. But at the same time, it's, like I said, it's a pretty big deal. They want to tank, they want to rebuild, and they're trying to sell that Trae Young is the next Steph Curry, when there will never be another Steph Curry. I'm sorry, and I'm sure Trae Young, if he can play half as good as he played during that little run that he had at Oklahoma, I'm sure they'll look at it as a success. But he didn't play that well at the end of the season last season for Oklahoma, and that's the last image we have of Trae Young in our head, other than him, not doing so well in the preseason either. So, we'll have to just kind of wait and see, I guess. But I feel the Hawks aren't going to be good. If we take a look at their starting five, the Hawks are not going to be good. They got Trae Young, Jeremy Lin's going to be backing them up. And then they got Kent Bazemore at the 2, Taurean Prince at the 3, John Collins at the 4, Dwayne Dedman, and Alex Len going to be splitting time at the 5. Like I said, this team will not be good. We all know that. But best case scenario, worst case scenario, it all depends on Trae Young. And like I said, I know it's a little unfair to put a lot of this pressure on him, but they're building for the future. They don't want to win. Vegas has our over-under at 23.5 wins, which is about right, considering they were dead last with 24 wins last year. But I wouldn't be surprised if they don't even get 20 wins, And like I said, it all is going to depend on how Trae Young does. And a successful season for them will be if they still suck, but Trae Young doesn't completely suck. And he shows flashes of, like I said, the early part of that run he had at Oklahoma. But worst case scenario for the team is they suck, and so does Trae Young. And it turns out that this guy was, it looks like he was to be more of a bust, or definitely not worth trading up for and missing out on a player like Luka Doncic, especially if Doncic does well for Dallas. But I spent way too much time talking about Atlanta because they are not going to be good. And like I said, sorry Hawks fans, tough times for you guys. But moving on to a team who, on the opposite end of the spectrum, probably going to be the best team in the East, the Boston Celtics, which hurts me to say as a Laker fan, but hey, it is what it is. They were second in the Eastern Conference last year with a record of 55-27, and they lost to the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't really technically bring anybody in, and they did say goodbye to Urebko and Greg Monroe, which I'm sure they'll be fine letting go. And like I said, they technically didn't get anybody new, but they are getting back Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving. As we all know, Gordon Hayward suffered that nasty injury in the very first game of last season. And then they also lost Kyrie for about the second half of the season, and never saw him again from that infection he had in his knee. But both of the guys look healthy. They'll look like they're ready to come back and play and pick up where they left off. And, they, like I said, they look like they're the team to beat. They are the new beast in the East. And, if everyone on this team can stay healthy, they look like they'll make it to the finals, and they can for sure give whoever they see in the West, probably the Warriors, little teaser, probably the Warriors, give them a run for their money. Worst case scenario for them, something goes wrong somewhere, whether guys get injured again or something like that. I don't know what, something goes wrong somewhere and they lose earlier than expected in the playoffs. I don't think they'll be so bad that they don't make the playoffs. Like I said, something catastrophic would have to happen for that to happen. But like I said, I just think that I just don't see that happening though. I just think that they'll be good. They'll be really good. They have a talented roster with, like I said, we'll take a look at. They got Kyrie Irving back at the 1. Jaylen Brown, it looks like he's going to be the starter. But like I said, the starter is in air quotes there. They have such a deep rotation. They can also go with Terry Rozier, Marcus Smart. And then at the 3, Gordon Hayward's back. And they also got Jason Tatum, who can interchange. Like I said, it's shout out to Jalen Rose. Positions are only really there so that a novice can understand the game, especially in nowadays game where it's essentially positioned as basketball. But Al Horford and Aaron Baines round things out in the front court at the 5. And like I said, this is a deep and talented roster. They made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals without their 2 best players. And that is why their Vegas' over-under is shocking to me, because they only have them at 57.5 wins. Like I said, last season they got to 55 without their 2 best players. And I think that they can definitely get over that. And I will be surprised if they get 60 plus. Like I said, there's a lot of wins that the Cavs are going to be giving up without LeBron. And I think the Celtics can take full advantage of that. And like I said, the only question that I have for this team, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but with Gordon Hayward and Kyrie Irving coming back, can Brad Stevens figure out how to stagger the minutes and stagger the lineups properly? Now, I know that this is a good problem to have. I guarantee you any coach would want to have this kind of problem where essentially they have too many good players, and they're trying to figure out which good players to play together, which one, blah, 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 all that stuff. And like I said, that's a good problem to have, but it is a little bit of a problem. Anytime that you're taking away minutes from other players, these guys want to play. They want to, earn their money. They want to, go out there and contribute. They want to feel like a part of the team. They all want to be out there. And, you're always running a risk of someone being unhappy. I don't think that this is the case, or I wouldn't bet on it, of that happening in Boston. It seems like these guys all are buying into the culture there. And like I said, and if anybody can figure it out, it's Brad Stevens, who is an early favorite for Coach of the Year, especially for me. And like I said, it's a good problem for them to have. And the Celtics just look like the team to beat in the East. And they look like they'll be the team to beat for a while. They are young, they are talented, and they are very well coached. And like I said, look for them to potentially be the new, like I said, the new beast in the East, the Boston Celtics, and to another team that's not quite at that level yet. But I will say I do like the Brooklyn Nets a little bit more than other people. Last season they finished 28-54, missed the playoffs, And looking at this team, especially from after this offseason, I think that they have a sneakily talented roster. And I low-key like their offseason pickups. They added Kenneth Faried, Ed Davis, Jared Dudley, and Shabazz Napier, whatever. But I really like the Kenneth Faried and Ed Davis pickups. They'll be thrown right in there as veteran presences to play off nicely with their pretty young backcourt. They have a pretty young backcourt rotation, which we'll take a look at. They're starting five. It looks like it's going to be D'Lo and Allen Crabbe in the backcourt, but they also have Kerry LeVert and Spencer Dinwiddie, who made a lot of noise last year, and they're getting a lot of, specifically Kerry LeVert, getting a lot of like most improved player kind of buzz, and just like one of those guys that keep like a lot of people have on their watch list for this season, and myself included. Like I said, sneakily talented, and then in the front court they got Damari Carroll, excuse me, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson, who has been pretty productive. Not gonna lie, and then we got Ed Davis, Jared Dudley backing him up, and at the 5 is Jared Allen, who is another guy that they have who is on a lot of people's watch lists as far as this guy might have a little bit of a breakout season or a most improved player kind of thing. Like I said, a lot of sneaky talent on this roster. And another big thing is they're young. Like, they're very young. D'Lo, Dinwiddie, Kerry LeVert, Jared Allen, all these guys are probably like around early 20s. And like I said, and they needed some veteran guys like Kenneth Faried, Ed Davis, Damari Carroll, Jared Dudley, in there in order to try and show them the ropes and stuff like that, and help balance all that stuff out. And on top of that, Kenny Atkinson is there for another season with the team to coach these young guys up, who's actually did considering that they're the Nets, did a pretty good job last year and showed flashes and stuff like that. Like I said, I like them a little bit more than a lot of other people do, and Vegas seems to be the same. Vegas has their over-under at 32.5, which to me sounds about right. I think that they can, if they can get it together, they can steal a few extra wins. That's an extra, 4 or 5 wins right there, and I think they can do that. And best case scenario, if everything kind of meshes and everything flows together, like I said, everybody buys in and it all works out, I think that they can be a little frisky, make a little bit of noise. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs or they're going to do anything like that, but I just think that, like I said, they will definitely catch a lot of people by surprise, like, oh, the Nets, all right. And it'll get fans and stuff like that excited about their future. But then worst case scenario, they just look like the Nets of old, which is what they were probably expecting them to look like anyway. So like I said, it's a win-win for them this season. And they can just maybe, like I said, I think they finally have their own draft pick this year, so that's good for them. And like I said, they can, even if they suck this year, they can, like I said, they keep their own pick, and they can hopefully look to try to add another piece and build for the future. Like I said, they have enough young pieces and young talented pieces. But yeah, keep an eye out on Kerry LeVert, Jared Allen, Dinwiddie. Keep an eye out on those guys for breakout seasons. But the biggest question that I have for the Nets is, it's a combination of two, but it's just I'm still trying to figure out which question to ask, I guess. It's, do they trade for Jimmy Butler, or should they trade for Jimmy Butler? As we all know, and I'll get into a little bit more on the Western Conference one, Jimmy Butler is not happy in Minnesota. He, voices frustrations, and he asked to be traded. And he picked 3 teams that he said he wanted to be traded to, the Brooklyn Nets being one of them. That's ultimately where I think he'll end up. Like, my gut feeling is I think he'll end up in Brooklyn somehow, some way. I know there was talks about him going to the Heat, and I know that there's been stuff coming out saying that the Nets don't want to trade away their young guys like Kerry LeVert or Jared Allen or Dinwiddie. And specifically, I think Kerry LeVert is the guy that they don't want to let go yet. But that's why I said I'm not sure if I should ask, do they trade for him or should they? It's going to depend on how the season goes for sure. But like I said, it's just something I want to float out there. And it's definitely a question we're going to have to re-explore as the season goes on. But like I said, deep down in my gut, I don't think that Jimmy Butler will be on the Timberwolves at the end of the season, and I think he's going to be in Brooklyn by then. But yeah, that's how the Nets, I think, will do. And continuing on this trend of not so good teams, Charlotte Hornets, who, shout out to Max Kellerman for coining this term, seem to be stuck in that NBA purgatory where they're, it's that purgatory where you're stuck in the middle. You're not bad enough to, to get in the lottery, get a lottery pick, and rebuild with younger talent or potentially younger talent, and you're not good enough to at least make the playoffs and extend your season for your fan base and be interesting and stuff like that. You're just kind of stuck in this little this purgatory, and you're just there and nothing happens. You just don't get better, you don't get worse, you're just staying the same. And they've been at this level for a while now. Last year they finished 36-46, and it feels like they've been like that for the last, like I said, few seasons. And I'm just gonna go right to it. The big question I have is this the year that they just say fuck it and blow it up and try to change something and just try to do something different? I don't know. They made a couple new changes. They got rid of Steve Clifford as the head coach, who I thought was pretty good, or at least did what he could with what he had. They're bringing in James Borrego. I think I said that right. He's an assistant coach on the Spurs. I don't know much about him, but they also brought in easily the most shocking free agent acquisition of the offseason was Tony Parker from the Spurs going to Charlotte. Like I said, I'm sure he knows this, how James Borrego is, and he can help kind of slowly ease the rest of the team into his system and his style of coaching and all that stuff. But like I said, ultimately, I just don't think it'll matter. I just don't think that they're still good. They also brought in Bismack Biyombo coming back to Charlotte, where he was drafted initially and stuff like that. Because they're still running with the same team essentially. If we take a look at their starting rotation, still got Kemba Walker, still have Nick Batum and Jeremy Lamb and Malik Monk, who showed flashes last year, but definitely not as productive as people thought he would be. Still got Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, still have Marvin Williams and Frank Kaminsky, and they still have Cody Zeller, who, along with the Plumlees, it just feels like there's Zellers everywhere. Like I said, just essentially still the same team. And I know that they added a couple guys, like I said, Tony Parker, Biyombo. They also drafted Miles Bridges out of Michigan State, who hopefully they can get some production out of. And they did a little bit of addition by subtraction by getting rid of Dwight Howard and MCW. But like I said, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think that they'll just be any better with this same squad. Vegas doesn't either. They have them right at the same at 35.5 wins, and I completely agree with that. Like I said, and unless they do something different, they're gonna stay the same. And I don't, best case scenario for them, their new coach, for whatever reason, this new coach and maybe Tony Parker energizes this lineup, and they can maybe contend for the playoffs, get the fans a little happy, something, I don't know. But worst case scenario, I arguably you could say best case with this one, the team still stinks, they're still about the same, and then they finally just say fuck it, blow it up at the trade deadline, move Kemba, move maybe Nick Batum. Well, I don't know about with his contract, but they move guys. They just start moving people around and trying to maybe tank, trying to spice things up. I don't know, but it's one thing to be bad. It's one thing to be good, but it's even worse if you're just meh and irrelevant, and that's what the Hornets are and have been. And like I said, even though I had the worst case scenario, it could be best case scenario too for them, that they just blow it up. And I don't know if they will. But I definitely think that they should blow this thing up and try to start over. Like I said, they got a new coach. Might as well. New system. So like I said, might as well try to start anew. But we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. And like I said, continuing on this road of mediocrity, we have the Chicago Bulls, who last season finished 27-55, missed the playoffs, and man, oh man, how far have the Bulls fallen from the early part of this this decade, where they were just, dominating and in the playoffs all the time and stuff like that. But it's just the way it goes sometimes, It's just the way it goes sometimes. And didn't really make a whole lot of moves this offseason. They got rid of Noah Vonleh and David Nwaba, and they brought in Jabari Parker, Coming Home. Cue that one song, Coming Home. And they drafted Wendell Carter, who a lot of people are excited about. I know I am a little bit, at least for the Bulls. I'm not like fully excited, but just for the Bulls, I'm like, oh, that's a good pick. He looks like he could be a talented young guy that they can use. But if we look at the starting lineup, and even the overall rotation, this team is just a collection of injured cast-offs from old teams. We got Chris Dunn, Cameron Payne, Zach LaVine, Jabari Parker, Lauri Markkanen, not from another team, but just an injured guy. OG Bobby Portis, Rolo, Robin Lopez, a lot of big guys a lot of like legit fives for the Bulls, and Robin Lopez, Wendell Carter, Felicio, and Ashik, and even Bobby Portis too, just a lot of OG big guys, like old school big guys, which is not good in this NBA. But hey, who knows? We'll see. But like I said, I mentioned just a huge collection of injured cast-offs, and they seem to be healthy this season, and hopefully they can stay healthy. Because if they can stay healthy, this is a talented roster on paper. Like on paper, if you just look at it, just looking at this right now, Chris Dunn, lottery pick, Zach LaVine, Jabari Parker, Lauri Markkanen, all lottery picks. But again, like I said, they just had their fair share of injuries, like I said, if they can stay healthy this year and be able to play enough games, I don't think that they'll be a good team and get back to the playoffs and stuff like that. But I think if they stay healthy and they play with the chip on their shoulder, like I said, these guys are all lottery picks. These guys are all good. They're all talented. We all know that. Just somewhere along the line, injuries got in the way. And if they can come together and bond over this or share this bond that they have and play with this chip on their shoulder, I think that they can be a pretty young, fun team who's like a top NBA League Pass team contender. Like I said, I'm not saying that they'll be, playoffs or anything like that, but at least they should be fun. Like I said, there's enough talent there to be fun and to be pretty good. But it just all depends on, can they stay healthy? That's the biggest question. I know that's a cop-out, easy, big question. But like I said, looking at this roster, it's the only question, This team is all based on whether, Zach LaVine, who also secured a bag this offseason, can if he still got bounce, if Jabari Parker, both his knees don't explode, if Chris Dunn's knee doesn't give out, because if they do and the injury bug hits this team again, they're really going to suck. And Vegas has their over-under at 27.5, which is about right. for me at least, and it's that number. That's why I think that they feel the same way, and they're like, listen, I don't know if they're really healthy. If they're all healthy, they can definitely get over. But if they don't get healthy, they're definitely going under. So, like I said, if this team could stay healthy, and play with a chip on their shoulder, they should be pretty fun. But that is a very, very large if coming out the Windy City. And staying in the Midwest, excuse me, the biggest drop off, the biggest losers in the East, and I'm sorry, but it's true. The Cleveland Cavaliers, who last season finished 4th in the East with a record of 50-32, lost in the finals to the Warriors. That record is not going to look like that. Well, actually, it might look like that, but you might want to flip the wins and losses around, because it's not going to be pretty in Cleveland. Contrary to what Tristan Thompson thinks, which was honestly probably the funniest thing anyone has ever said, or anyone said in this offseason. Tristan Thompson said that, despite what happened, we're still the team to beat in the East. It's like, yeah, okay, all right, buddy. It's not gonna be good. It's not gonna be good in Cleveland. Obviously, because LeBron is not there anymore. They also lost Jeff Green, but then again, they never did. They really have him. I mean, he didn't really do anything for him last season. But yeah, they lost LeBron. They lost Jeff Green. They brought in Sam Decker, and they brought back Channing Frye. And they brought in David Nwaba, who a lot of people are kind of excited on. He played, former Laker, had a little flashes with the Lakers, but last year did pretty well with the Bulls. He was one of the only bright spots on that Bulls team. And like I said, a lot of, if there's anything to be excited about, it's David Nwaba and their first round draft pick, Colin Sexton, who, if we look at the starting rotation, he's technically second on the depth chart right now behind George Hill, but look for him to definitely get more and more minutes and more playing time, and potentially even be the starter by season's end. Then at the 2, they got J.R. Smith, where anything is possible with this man. Jordan Clarkson, who looks like he's been hanging out with J.R. Smith a little bit too much with his new throat tats, and that boy been getting yadded over the offseason. And then David Nwaba's in there too. Look for him to get some more minutes. Still got Rodney Hood and Kyle Korver. Still have Kevin Love and Larry Nance, who also secured that MF bag. Larry Nance. If Larry Nance can secure the bag, some of these other NBA players gotta have a real talk with their agents about, what the fuck. Can I secure the bag, please? If Larry Nance can, then, like I said, a lot of guys need to talk to their agents. And then Tristan Thompson at the 5. Like I said, this is not a good roster. It never was a good roster. They just happen to have LeBron, and everyone's gonna see this team's true colors, and they're gonna look like they were before LeBron got there. Vegas has their over-under at 30.5. I'm going under. They will be lucky if they can get 30 wins. And, the best case, worst case for this team, it's just best case is if they don't completely suck. And, Colin Sexton looks like he's going to be a pretty good player, I guess. Worst case scenario, they just completely suck and are a lottery team again, which again, arguably might not even be worst case scenario, because they're going to need all the help they can get going forward. And the biggest question I have for them is, when do they accept that they are a lottery team? And I feel the sooner the better for their sake. But yeah, tough times in Cleveland. Sorry, Cavs fans. It's not going to be fun, especially with this LeBron roster. It is bad times in Cleveland again, but starting to get better now. Staying in the Midwest, the Detroit Pistons, who I think will benefit the most from LeBron not being on the Cavs, and like I keep saying, with the amount of wins that they'll be giving up to the rest of these teams, I think that they will, like I said, be the team that should benefit the most from that. And I think that they're going to be the team that sneaks in and takes the Cavs playoff spot. Last season, they missed the playoffs with a record of 39-43. And they were easily the biggest underachiever in the Eastern Conference last season, given the roster that they have, which they didn't really make a whole lot of changes to. It's essentially the same roster. They brought in Jose Calderon and Zaza Pachulia so they can get some championship pedigree around that locker room. But they also changed their head coach. Stan Van Gundy, no longer there. Big free agent signing for ESPN. Should have been there in the first place quite some time ago. But like I said, good pickup for ESPN. Stan Van will be great for them. But replacing Stan Van Gundy on the sidelines for the Pistons is Dwayne Casey, the reigning, recently fired Coach of the Year, who was let go, like I said, by the Raptors, which is still crazy to me when you think about it. That he won Coach of the Year and was still fired. I mean, that's just almost unheard of. But hey, Raptors gonna Raptors, I guess. But yeah, new coach with essentially the same team, and that is, that's my biggest question: is how much of an impact will Dwayne Casey have on this roster? Because if Stan Van Gundy couldn't get it done, can Dwayne Casey? I don't know. This is a talented roster. It should be. At least, like I said, on paper, it should be a talented roster. But it is an offensive-minded roster. We look at this. We look at the rotation. We got Reggie Jackson, a lot of offense. Ish Smith, same thing. Nice offense off the bench. Reggie Bullock, Luke Kennard, Langston Galloway, offensive guys. Stanley Johnson, a pretty good, probably the best two-way player they got. And then I use best very loosely there. And it is a very, very, very offensive-minded front court with Blake Griffin and Andre Drummond. Not a whole lot of defense there between those guys. But, it's going to be tough because Dwayne Casey is such a defensive-minded coach. I don't know how it's going to... Like I said, I don't know if it's going to take another season or take an extra season for the team to adjust, or for Dwayne Casey to make the necessary moves he needs in the offseason to get the players that he wants to fit his system. I don't know. That's worst case scenario for me, is that they need another season to adjust to Dwayne Casey's system, and given that this team stays healthy, specifically Blake Griffin, and he isn't too distracted by Detroit's booming comedy and improv scene, that they underachieve again like last season. And everyone, I don't know if they'll have their pitchforks and stuff out, but they'll definitely be upset and say, well, now we know why Dwayne Casey got fired from Toronto, yada, yada, all that stuff. But best case scenario, he comes in, has an immediate impact on this team, teaches them the defense that they need to know, and this team reaches its full potential, which I think can be a contender in the playoffs. Like I said, they are offensively talented enough to be able to score with anybody. Reggie Jackson, as much as people don't like him, when he's hot, he's a pretty good player. He can score with the best of them. Blake Griffin, if he can look like Blake from, his heyday in with the Clippers, they've got something there too. Andre Drummond, a beast down low. Hopefully he can they can get that kind of production from him where he was putting up 20-20 or averaging 20 and 20. But for whatever reason, Vegas doesn't think so. I'm not in agreement there. Vegas has their over-under at 37.5, having them actually be worse than they were last season. It's not out of the realm of possibility. I just don't see it happening. Like I said, I think that they'll be over that. I think that they'll be over 500, and like I said, I think that they will be the team to take the Cavaliers' playoff spot. And like I said, I'm not saying that they'll be the best team in the East. I'm not saying that they'll be great, or I'm saying that they'll, be up there with like the Celtics or the Pacers or the Raptors or anything like that. But I am saying that I think that they'll be better, and they should be better. And so if they can stay healthy, and if Dwayne Casey can, teach these guys a little bit of defense, like I said, look for them to at least look for them to be contenders in the East now, as opposed to the pretenders that they've been. But now we are starting to get into some of the good teams. Finally, starting with the Indiana Pacers, who were the biggest surprise definitely in the East last season, and maybe in the entire NBA. The biggest surprise, overachievers, with a record of 48-34, finished 5th in the East, lost in the second round to Cleveland in a very, very tough matchup. And Victor Oladipo was, rightfully the most improved player of the NBA last season. We all know the stories. He changed his body, changed his diet, changed his workout, changed his lifestyle, everything, and it paid dividends for him on the court. And it helped himself personally, and it helped his team as well. And like I said, they were great last year. They were the biggest surprise in the East last season, but they shouldn't sneak up on anyone this season. More teams, they're not going to catch anybody by surprise this season. Now they know that this is what they're into. They know that what to expect from them. And the Pacers knew that, which is why they went out and got the players they did, which I like. I really like the offseason pickups they made. In Tyreek Evans, who's getting a lot of buzz for early Sixth Man of the Year. And they also got Doug McDermott, who I think is good, another shooter they can have in their arsenal. And they also got Kyle O'Quinn, who is a serviceable NBA big man. Like I said, just one of those guys that just knows his role of set screens, grab rebounds. Got 6 fouls to give. Make sure that he gives them good. And like I said, it's just I really, really like these pickups for them to add to their, like I said, already pretty good lineup. Can't front. They got Darren Collison and Corey Joseph at the 1. Victor Oladipo, very obviously holding it down for them, the team leader. The 2 with Tyreek Evans backing him up again. Early buzz for Sixth Man of the Year. Look for that. And a couple big surprises in their front court, and Bogdanovich, who lightened it up from 3, big surprise for them, and as well as Sabonis, Sabonis' son. I'm drawing a blank on his first name, but Sabonis was a big surprise for them last year, backing up Miles Turner and Thaddeus Young, especially Miles Turner, who again also secured that MF bag not too long ago. But, speaking of Miles Turner, everyone expected him to have that breakout season last season. Injuries kind of prevented that from happening. He seems to be in much better shape. He seems to be healthy again. And like I said, look for this season to be the season where he breaks out. The Pacers obviously think so. They paid him very well. And, I really like this team. I like them more than Vegas. Vegas actually has them at 47.5 wins. Right about the same. I think they'll do a little bit better at about 50 wins. Maybe a little bit more. Who knows? And yeah, I really like this team. The biggest question that I have, which kind of coincides with the worst case scenario, is can they prove that last season wasn't a fluke? And can they prove that they're legit contenders in the East? Worst case scenario, like I said, piggybacking off that, last season was a fluke. Everyone shows signs of regression. Victor Oladipo isn't as good for whatever reason. Miles Turner, it turns out maybe he's not the type of player we think he'll be. He doesn't actually have, it wasn't just the injuries, he just won't reach that potential. That kind of stuff happens, and like I said, also pairing that with teams figure them out. Like I said, they're not going to catch anyone by surprise. Like I said, they do finish with the under 47.5. I don't know, but that's worst case scenario. And like I said, they're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to be in the playoff hunt and all that stuff. It's just they just don't have that kind of flair that they had last season. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that they fall under the their season plays out more best case scenario with them, where Victor Oladipo and the rest of the team proved that last season wasn't a fluke. Their offseason pickups, which I like I said, help them out big time. Tyreek Evans has a big impact. Dougie McBuckets has a big impact for him. And, like I said, they proved that last year wasn't a little flash in the pan, and they make some serious noise in the East, and they contend with, the heavyweights in with the likes of the Celtics, the Bucks, the Raptors, you know what I mean? Like they really can I think that they'll really make some noise, and they are one of my favorites in the East for sure. Now moving down south to Miami. Definitely one of the more interesting teams, at least to me. Last season they finished 44-38, finished 6th in the East, lost in the first round to the Sixers. Biggest offseason thing, or biggest thing for them going into the season is, D-Wade announcing this is going to be his last season. They're going to be doing the whole farewell tour for him and all that stuff, which is great for D-Wade. Got to big him up real quick. D-Wade, man, so good for so many years, and I know a lot of people only know him as, the old man D-Wade, especially nowadays with how popular NBA's gotten. But do yourself a favor if you're a little bit younger and don't remember D-Wade when he was D-Wade. But D-Wade, man, easily, one of the best two guards of all time. For so many years, he would have been number one if Kobe wasn't around. Go back and watch some D-Wade highlights. You're going to be seeing a lot of them when they show when he goes to different places. Like I said, when they big him up and all that. And like I said, D-Wade, just a little salute to you, my man. A little tip of the cap. Sipping some wine. Nice glass of red vino for D-Wade. And it's crazy, man. It's crazy. A lot of the, getting older, a lot of the players that I, grew up watching, retiring now, just it's very humbling. Very, very, very humbling, to say the least. But enough of that. The Miami Heat, what makes them so interesting to me at least, is they didn't really sign anybody, didn't really let anybody go, didn't have any draft picks, so they're essentially running with the same lineup that they have. They still got Goran Dragic and Tyler Johnson. Like I said, they got D-Wade, still going with Waiters Island, Deion Waiters and Wayne Ellington. Still Josh Richardson, Justice Winslow, who also secured that MF bag. Derek Jones. Still got James Johnson and Kelly Olynyk. UD is still around somehow. And they're still going with Hassan Whiteside and Bam at the 5. Like I said, essentially the same team. And that makes me feel like seeing that when I was doing my research, I'm like, man, they didn't really bring anybody in. They're still running the same team. My little antenna, my little feelers went up. And it makes me feel like Pat Riley has got something up his sleeve. I don't know what. That's the biggest question, is what is Pat Riley going to do? Pat Riley's not the kind of guy to just sit around and wait for things to happen. He is the definition of a go-getter. And he is not going to sit around, wait for things to happen, take things lightly, or anything like that. And he is definitely... something is going to happen. I don't know what. As we've seen already, they tried to get Jimmy Butler. Things kind of fell apart, but that could still be on the table as the season progresses. Who knows? Like I said, I really don't know. And that all coincides with my best case, worst case scenario for them is, like I said, I really think he's going to do something. I don't know what it is. And my best case scenario, worst case scenario is all based on whether he does something or not. Best case scenario, Pat Riley pulls off some crazy trade or something, and it all works out for them. Team makes the playoffs, make a little bit of a run, and they can send D-Wade off on a, air quotes, winning note, and have some new pieces to build around for the future. Like I said, I don't think that they're good enough yet to get it done, even if they do pull off some crazy trade. But I think something's happening. I don't know what, though. Worst case scenario, though, Pat Riley does make a trade, but he swings and misses on whoever it is. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not saying anything here. I don't know who it is. I don't have any insider information. My sources aren't telling me anything here. But like I said, he swings and misses on a deal or doesn't make a deal at all. And they just run with this same team and, suffer the same fate they did last season. Maybe even worse. Who knows? I don't know. But what I do know is that Vegas has their over on at 41.5, and I'm taking the over on that. I just don't see a Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra led team slipping like this. I don't see them going anything less than 500. So like I said, give me the over on that, even if it's the slight over where it's even 43 wins, even 44 again. I just don't see them falling off like that, at least not just yet. But then again, it could all depend on what move Pat Riley makes. I will definitely be following, not following the Miami Heat intently, but I'll be definitely just keeping my eye out on the timeline for something that the Heat does. But like I said, that's my big prediction, I guess, for the season. That the Miami Heat will do something. I don't know what, but they'll do something. But yeah, almost done here, about halfway through. We've got the Milwaukee Bucks, who last season finished 44-38, 7th in the East, lost in the first round to Boston in a very tough, hard-fought series. Easily the most hyped team for obvious reasons. They've got the most hyped player in Giannis, everyone's favorite to win the MVP this season. I really, really like this team. I think they will finish definitely better than 7th. They added some new players, and I really like the players that they added in Brook Lopez and Ilyasova. Brook Lopez, I'm just mad that the Lakers didn't keep him. I think that they could have used him still. He's a serviceable player in the paint, both on offense and defense, and with that defensive presence that he brings, it takes a lot of the responsibility off Giannis to have to be down there and stuff like that. And he can be out in the wings, and he can be closer, excuse me, to his own basket in case they get, for the fast break. He doesn't have to be all the way underneath the basket or anything like that. So that's good pickup in Lopez. And Ilyasova, good bench scoring option. Like I said, I've always liked Ilyasova. It just seems like he bounces around from team to team, but he's always got a job, which means that he's still pretty good. So I like that. They lost Jabari Parker, which I'm sure that they just ran out of patience with him, and I'm sure they thought he was talented, but they just couldn't keep having to wait on him, and they just had to make a move. They also drafted Dante DiVincenzo, probably the most Italian name I've ever seen. The big ragu or air ragu from Villanova. And, if we take a look at, like I say, I mentioned the pickup. So if we take a look at the starting rotation, Eric Bledsoe's still going to be there. DiVincenzo and Delly will be backing him up. Malcolm Brogdon is still there at the 2. Chris Middleton and Tony Snell at the 3, bringing the 3-point presence. Giannis obviously at the 4. Look for him to just be playing a lot of 4, a lot of 3, switching it up there a little bit. Like I said, positionless basketball here. Ilyasova backing him up, and then immediately they're going to slide Brook Lopez into the starting 5, so that way they can use John Henson and Thon Maker as backups, which I think they're better as backups. They're serviceable NBA players, but they're much better served as backups. Vegas has their over at 46.5. I think they will definitely do better than they did last season with the 44 wins because they just had no coaching, which is also the other big acquisition for them. Excuse me. I forgot to mention new coach and Mike Budenholzer. Easily one of the worst coached teams last year. The Bucks were. The Jay Kidd thing was a disaster, and all the other stuff, and all the other interim head coaches they had, and all that stuff. Finally got a good coach in Mike Budenholzer, who is going to be just as hungry as the team for success, considering he was with the Hawks last couple seasons, who were trying to tank, but he wasn't having any of that shit. Like I said, he's going to be hungry to win. This team is going to be hungry to win, and like I said, Mike Budenholzer. This looks like a nice pairing for them, and I think that there's going to be a lot of big things with this team. Big things can happen this season, but the big question, I guess it's the big question. It's all about Giannis. And can Giannis make the leap to the next level of superstar and live up to the hype like everyone thinks he can? Because this team will go as far as Giannis can carry them. I know that's a little bit much, a lot of pressure to put on one player, but that's just where they are. That's where we are. And Giannis showed the flashes last season that he was ready to explode. He's got a good coach now. He's got another year of experience under his belt. He got a little taste of success. He's gonna come out hungry. And best case scenario, it all works out. Like I said, Budenholzer's great for him. These offseason pickups really help take a lot of the pressure off of Giannis, and they can just let him just be more free and free-flowing and just be the beast that he is, the Greek freak. And they become a serious contender in the East. Like a serious contender. Like I said, battling it out with Boston, Philly, Toronto, for one of the top teams in the East. And I think that's the way it's going to go. I think that they'll be one of the top seeds in the East during the regular season. I think that they will be the one. It'll be either Boston, Philly, or the Bucks in the Eastern Conference Finals, and that's the way I think it will go. Worst case scenario, they come out flat. They don't. They don't live up to the hype. They come out, like I said, they just come out a little bit flatter. They don't have as dominating of a regular season as people think they will, and they just don't make it out of the first round again. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, they're still going to make the playoffs. They're still going to have Giannis, which is good, but like I said, I just don't. Like I said, worst case scenario, they just don't live up to the hype as a team and stuff like that. And like I said, I don't think that's going to happen. I really, really, really like the Bucks. I really, really like the over on 46.5 wins. Can't remember if I mentioned that or not, but yeah, man, Bucks look, like I said, they look like they are ready to. Them and Giannis look like they are ready to erupt and just explode and take the East by storm. It's all theirs for the taking. They just, like I said, they're gonna go as far as Giannis goes. Giannis seems ready. He seems like he's focused. He's been in the gym, working on his game. Worked with Kobe, did all that stuff. And like I said, the Bucks are my favorite to be one of the top teams in the East, for damn show. Now we go a little backtracking here, I guess, as far as successful teams in the East, but we got the New York Knicks, who finished 29-53 last season, missed out on the playoffs. Looked pretty promising last season, but all that momentum was halted immediately when Kristaps Porzingis got hurt. Who, I guess I'll just go into it right now. The Knicks season is all going to be based on whether Zinger comes back. Initially, the question was, when is Porzingis going to come back? Are they going to wait a little bit more in the season to make sure that he's completely healthy? Are they going to just, if he feels good, no matter when it is, have him come back and play, stuff like that. But now, hearing different things from different people, the question switched from when is Porzingis going to come back to if Porzingis comes back. It's not. It looks more like if, and is he even going to come back this season? Is the way it's going to go. I really don't know. If he's healthy, maybe, but like I said, he is so important to their franchise that, you know, even if he comes back, is it really going to affect the outcome of this team? Are they going to make the playoffs? Probably not. So you don't want to run the risk of having him come back too early or having him come back and you know, potentially worsen the injury, stuff like that. So it's a lot of stuff going on with Zinger. I personally don't know what the right thing to do is. Obviously, he wants to go out there and play. You know, that's all he's been talking about. If you follow him on social media and stuff like that. You know, they're definitely going to need him because, you know, taking a look at this roster, it's not the worst roster in the world. You know, they still have Trey Burke and Courtney Lee and Frankie Smokes, which is, you know, guys that they're high on, especially Frankie Smokes. And Kevin Knox too. They're very high on Kevin Knox. A couple of the young guys that they really like. They still got Tim Hardaway Jr., still got Emmanuel Mudiay. They added Mario Hezonja, Noah Vonleh, you know, to this lineup. I guess just to fill the spot, I guess, until Zinger comes back. And they still got Enes Kanter. They finally said goodbye to Joakim Noah. That happened within the last, you know, 24, 48 hours. Ooh, excuse me, talking a lot. I had to get a drink there. But yeah, you know, it's like I said, it's not the best lineup, but it's not the worst either. You know, especially if they can get Porzingis back, who, like I said, was just great for them up until the injury. And also they got a new head coach. They let go Jeff Hornacek and they brought in David Fizdale, who I know the record doesn't show it, but I thought he did a pretty good job with the Grizzlies. And you know, I think that's the thought process that the Knicks had as well. They you know, if you do, like I said, if you just look at the wins and losses, the Grizzlies didn't do well, and it looks like David Fizdale didn't do well. But he really changed a lot of things there for a lot of different players, and I think that the biggest thing was the work that David Fizdale put in to change Marc Gasol's game from a down low big man to stretching him out, making him a better perimeter threat, making him better all around scorer. They're looking at that, and I think that they want to imply that or implicate that with Porzingis. I mentioned this in an earlier episode of a podcast a while back, but yeah, that's the biggest thing to me is I think that they saw what Fizdale did with Marc Gasol, and they're like, we want some of that. Please bring that to Kristaps Porzingis, who is arguably more talented and can be an even better player than Marc Gasol, which, if that's the case, would be huge for Porzingis and huge for the Knicks. Vegas has our over-under about the same, 29.5 wins, which is about right. And like I said, it all depends on whether or not Porzingis comes back and how many games he plays. Best case scenario, he comes back and he plays. He plays as well as he played last season before the injury. Doesn't seem affected by it at all or anything like that. Comes back stronger. The young players that they have, like Kevin Knox, who was the preseason darling for not just the Knicks but the NBA overall. Kevin Knox is good. Frankie Smokes is good. David Fizdale is good. And the Garden is fun again. That's best case scenario for the Knicks next season. And they got something to build on going forward. For maybe if Kevin Durant shows up, maybe Kyrie Irving. We'll have to wait and see. But then again, worst case scenario, Porzingis. They play it safe with Porzingis, and they limit his amount of games. And he's not out there as much. Obviously, he helps them out big time. So if he's not out there, they're obviously not going to be as good. And they're just not as good, honestly. And then they're back to where they were, which is all right, I guess. They get another lottery pick, whatever. Like I said, more pieces to build for the future. And like I said, they're just they're playing the long run. They're playing the long game with this one. It seems like. So similar to the Nets, anything extra that they can get from Porzingis seems like icing on the cake for this season. And like I said, it looks like they're just playing for the future. But that's how the Knicks are going to do. Moving down south to Orlando with the Magic. Biggest question mark I have out of all the teams, honestly. I just don't know what to expect from this team at all. Well, I mean, I do know what to expect, but anyway. Last season, they finished 25-57, missed the playoffs completely. They made some moves. They brought in Jerry Grant in a trade from Chicago. They brought in Mozgov. They got rid of Hezonja, Biyombo, Shelvin Mack, and their head coach, Frank Vogel, and they're replacing him with Steve Clifford. I'm going to jump right into it. So they picked up those guys. They drafted Mo Bamba. Shout out to Mo Bamba. Shout out Sheck West. They brought in Mo Bamba, who I really like. And with this lineup, now they have DJ Augustine, Jerry Grant, Evan Fournier, Terrence Ross, Jonathan Simmons, Jonathan Isaac, Aaron Gordon, who also secured that MF bag, and some more big men, another slew of big men in Vucevic, Mo Bamba, and Mozgov now. You know, they have these guys. They have this new coach in Steve Clifford, who, similar to the Pistons, they have this defensive-minded head coach with an offensive-heavy roster. And on top of that, they had Frank Vogel before, who was also a defensive-minded head coach. And I don't know what makes Cleveland any different. Vegas has their over/under at 31.5 wins. They have them at 6 to potentially 7 games better. And I'm going way under on that. And the only explanation I have is that Vegas thinks that Steve Clifford is worth 6.5 wins, and I'm not sure that he is, and I don't think he can affect his team that quickly. Maybe Vegas knows something that I don't, but I do not agree with that at all. If I had money, I would put all my money on the under there, and I just don't see it. I don't see this roster being that much better, and I know that, like I said, that there's a lot of wins that the Cavs are going to be giving up, and there's a lot more wins for teams to take. I just don't think that the Magic are one of those teams. Maybe they'll be a little bit better, sure. I just don't think they'll be that much better. Best case scenario, they're a little bit better. They show signs of progression. You know that they pick it up a little bit on defense, because of Steve Clifford's coaching and all that. You know, Aaron Gordon has a great season. Mo Bamba turns out to be the type of player that we all think he can be, and he actually is a stretch 5, is what it looks like. He can be at his max potential, but I just don't see them being that much better. It's not, worst case scenario is they just suck again, like they have been. But like I said, I think they'll be somewhere in the middle. I don't know why there's so much hype around the Magic right now, and I think that they're gonna be, the fans and everyone that's rooting for them and stuff like that will be seriously let down by this, and it's just, I don't know. I just don't see it. I really don't see it. I mean, I like Aaron Gordon. I like Mo Bamba. He's one of my. I went out early and got him in my fantasy. I like some of these guys on the team, but I just don't. I don't think that they can win. Especially considering how, like I said, a lot of other teams are getting better. The Pacers are probably going to do better. The Bucks are probably going to do better. And I don't know. I just that's the thing. I just don't see it. That's the one thing that that's the one. I'm in adamant disagreement with Vegas. I just do not see it happening. Rounding things out now, home stretch, boys and girls. Hang in there, we're almost done. We got the Sixers. Trust the process, and trust the process they did last season. They were third in the East with a record of 52-30. Lost in a tough series to the Boston Celtics in the second round of the playoffs. And they definitely had probably the strangest offseason last season. Obviously, with the Brian Colangelo burner Twitter account story that came out. Shout out to the Ringer. that was probably one of the weirdest storylines that we've ever seen as far as an NBA story goes. And it was a huge thing, and they're lucky it happened when it did, because if that happened closer to the season start, that's all people would be talking about right now, and that would be a huge, huge, huge distraction for them. But Brian Colangelo is now out as general manager, and whatever else of other, I think it president of basketball operations, whatever other duties he had, and they brought in fan favorite Elton Brand, who it seems like initially I thought that this was like I said, a PR kind of move, where, the Brian Colangelo thing was so ugly and pretty bad. Honestly, it was pretty bad, that they had to try and save face somehow. So what better way to do it than keeping everything in house, having a player like Elton Brand be the new GM. Like I said, a fan favorite. Everyone loves him. They didn't go out and they didn't outsource it to someone. They kept it within the team. Someone who was it was just like a special advisor type role for the last couple seasons. Big for them, very, very big for them to be able to bounce back from that the way they did. But enough about the stuff that happened in the front office. On the court, I like their offseason pickups more than most people. Even though they let go some pretty important players for their team in Bellinelli and Ilyasova, I like the pickups they got in Wilson Chandler and Mike Muscala. I think Wilson Chandler, he's a little older, yes, I know that, but I like him more. I think he can just be good off the bench. He's a good veteran player. He's a leader. He can, like I said, just come off the bench and score and play a little defense as well. And like I said, just brings an adult presence to the locker room as well. So that's good. Mike Muscala, also pretty good, serviceable backup big man for the team, to add to the rotation, which should be good again this year. It should be good. I'm starting to get a little hesitant as I speak, just because the biggest question that I have is, will there be some regression? It's weird because as much as I don't think there will be with this team, because given how talented they are, how young they are, they all have another year of experience they have a year of experience under their belt. They got a taste of success. Like I said, the best thing that could have happened to them was on that run that they made was actually losing. Losing was the best thing that could have happened to them. Like I said, to get a little taste of it. For some reason, I feel like regression for them isn't as far-fetched as some people think. If we look at this rotation, obviously Ben Simmons is going to be the starting one. JJ Redick is back. TJ McConnell's there. They brought in Zaire. They drafted Zaire Smith. He should be pretty good and contribute for them as well. Like I mentioned, Wilson Chandler and Robert Covington are going to be the threes. Wilson Chandler going to be back in Robert Covington. Dario Saric, with the departure of Ilyasova, will slip into the starting 4 role now. Who's, like I said, another player on getting some early buzz for most improved player. So watch for that. Like I said, Muscala will back him up, and the process, Joel Embiid will be rounding things out at the 5. And I know I didn't mention one player because this one player will be so important, so vital to this team. Markelle Fultz has to be better. He has to be better. And they're showing some workouts, sure, whatever. Everybody looks good in a workout on an open gym with no one around, kind of thing, right? But he has to be better for this team. And if he can if they can get anything out of him, anything, it's a plus for them, because last year was such a disaster for Markelle Fultz. If things don't work out for Markelle Fultz, he has to be the all-time biggest NBA bust, number 1 overall pick bust ever. Like, that has to be the case. Like, no doubt about it. He's the number 1 overall bust. but he has to be better. And the worst case scenario for this team all relies on those three guys: Simmons, Fultz, and Embiid. Mainly, like I mentioned, if what kind of production they get from Markelle Fultz, and between Simmons and Embiid, how many games will they miss? They're gonna miss some games. Specifically, Embiid is gonna miss some games. They're trying to limit the amount of games that he misses for rest. But they're going to still have him on a game restriction. He hasn't played more than, I think, like 60 games in a season. And they're going to definitely need as many as they can with him. Hopefully he doesn't miss more than the games that they have him resting. Hopefully he can stay healthy. Same thing goes for Simmons. I don't know if they're going to have him. They're going to give him rest days like they will with Embiid, but he has to stay healthy as well. He was, one of the most dynamic and fun players to watch all last season. Both of them were, actually. And they are probably the best young, or the most, I'm trying to think of the right terms to say. I wrote down best. I don't like that term. They're definitely, they have the most potential as a 1-2 punch in the NBA right now. And best case scenario for them, Embiid and Simmons stay healthy. They don't miss too many games. Fultz becomes a plus player. He reaches the potential that the Sixers thought that he could get to when they took him first overall, and they become a serious contender in the East. And I think that if they can all pull it together and figure it out, that they can make a legit playoff run, similar to the Oklahoma City Thunder's run in 2012, I think it was, when they still had KD, Russ, and James Harden. This team, if everything goes perfectly for the Sixers, it feels like they can have a run like that, where they get there a little bit earlier than people expected, but at the same time, it's not a full-on surprise that they got that far, because that's how good and how talented they all are. That's best case scenario for me. Worst case scenario for me, it's just the opposite. The exact opposite. Embiid and Simmons miss too many games for whatever reason, whether it's injuries, whether it's rest, whatever it is. They miss too many games, and Fultz still sucks, which leads to an underwhelming regular season, and they don't have any momentum or anything, and it leads to like some kind of early playoff exit versus a team that they should beat. Like one of the I have a feeling that there'll be a high, no matter what happens, there'll still be a higher playoff seed, but like I said, they lose earlier than expected to a team that they should beat. I don't think that's going to happen. I'm very optimistic with this Sixers team, and I think that they will be closer to the best case scenario than to the worst case scenario. And I'm very, very high on the Sixers, and like I said, don't be surprised if they have a similar run to the one that the Thunder did with a young Harden, Russ, and KD. But yeah, that's like I said, I'm very, very excited for the Sixers team, and so I know I'm not alone. But on to another team, another top team in the East. The top team in the East last year, the Toronto Raptors, who finished with a record of 59-23. Lost in the second round to Cleveland again. But they don't have to worry about LeBron anymore. They are very happy. A big weight off their shoulders that LeBronto is no longer a thing for them. And, the Raptors definitely had themselves an offseason, to say the least. Because, again, unless you've been living under a rock, they had a pretty big offseason move as well. They traded for Kawhi Leonard. They traded, but in order to get him, they had to trade DeMar DeRozan, who was a much beloved by the city, by the fans, by everyone in Canada, and he loved them just as much back. That's a big thing. That's a big deal. I have a two-part biggest question for that. One is how much will trading DeMar affect the chemistry of this team and like just the locker room vibe overall, with where hey man, he was probably the best player, the most beloved player, and they traded him for this guy, Kawhi Leonard. Not saying he's a bad player, but he hasn't been healthy. And that's piggybacking off that for the next question is, how healthy is Kawhi? How healthy is he? And if he is healthy, can he play like Finals MVP Kawhi, like the Kawhi that we last saw before the injury? And will he even be here long term? Who knows? No one really knows. No one knows, and that's the big question, which I'll touch on a little bit more later. But let's get through all the other stuff. So they not only did they trade for Kawhi, they also brought in Danny Green, part of that trade, and they also signed Greg Monroe as a backup big man for them, which I think is I think it's okay for them. I don't think it's the best kind of trade, but I think it's or best pickup, but it's good. He's a big body that they can throw down there. Like I said, they traded away DeMar DeRozan, but Jakob Poeltl was part of that trade as well. And they also, like I mentioned earlier, fired their coach of the year in Dwayne Casey. And they brought in one of the assistant head coaches in Nick Nurse. They promoted him to head coach. I don't know much about him. From what I understand, he's a good coach, I guess. Obviously, they think so because they made him head coach. But I think he's a good coach. Players like him. And like I said, he's another defensive-minded coach, I believe. And hopefully he can, like I said, I know I was joking around about stuff like that, about how I can't believe that they fired him after getting coach of the year. But, it's just one of those things where it was the same outcome for the Raptors no matter what, year after year after year. And something had to change. And I guess they just felt that this was the year to do it. I felt they should have waited another year, especially considering everyone knew that LeBron was leaving. I guess Toronto was the only team that didn't know that LeBron was leaving. But hey, like I said, it is what it is. This is what they got to go out there with, and these are the cards that they've been dealt. The starting rotation is essentially the same, just with Kawhi instead of Kawhi in there instead of DeMar DeRozan. Still got Kyle Lowry, still got DeLon Wright and Fred VanVleet. Still have C.J. Miles and Norman Powell. Like I said, now they got Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green in there. I think they're going to be starting right away. Well, I know at least Kawhi Leonard will be. Danny Green, I'm not sure. He might be switching off starting duties with C.J. Miles. And they still got Serge Ibaka and Siakam, and they still got Jonas down there holding it down in the paint. And like I said before, this season is going to depend on Kawhi's health. And if he's healthy, and if he can pick up where he left off as the Sharktopus, the Finals MVP that we all saw, I think he can. It's not, like I said, this isn't any cutting edge analysis here or anything, but he can really help the Raptors out and be help them be a terror in the East, and help them keep their whatever status they have as one of the top teams in the East. He'll be a plus player. He'll really impact them both on offense and defense, which is the thing that everyone's looking for. If he's healthy, he is a top contender for Defensive Player of the Year. Every time that he's healthy, he's always a top consideration for Defensive Player of the Year. But that's the big thing, is if he's healthy. If Kawhi is not healthy, that's the worst case scenario for them. If he still isn't healthy and he doesn't play as many games as he should play, or excuse me, the Raptors are hoping that they can play, this lineup isn't good enough. No offense to Kyle Lowry or Valanciunas or whoever else. This lineup just isn't good enough to get it done. they're good enough to still make the playoffs. But I just don't think they're good enough to, make any noise like as if Kawhi was there or if DeMar was still there. So this whole season really depends on Kawhi's health. Vegas seems to think so. They have their over-under at 54.5 wins, which I think is about right. I don't think that they're going to be the number one seed in the East, like I said, and it's not any fault of their own. I just think that, some of the other teams are just going to be better, like the Celtics, the Sixers, maybe even the Pacers. They're going to take some wins, and I think that that's about right for them. And on top of that, not only will they get the new players that they're not even sure about, they also got a new coach that they're still that have to learn a new system. And yeah, like I said, that's about right for me. Like I said, I don't think that they can win the title this year, but I still think that if everyone's healthy and if everything goes according to their plan, they'll still be a relevant top team in the East, which is, really all they can ask for at this point. And all right, last but certainly not least, actually I think they are least, Washington Wizards, who were 8th in the East last season with a record of 43-39, lost in the first round to the Raptors. And, this team, man, got rid of Marcin Gortat, traded him to the Clippers, got rid of Mike Scott, and brought in Dwight Howard and Austin Rivers. And that is I have a big all caps, bold, italicized everything, LOL next to that, because that is just, you hate to clown on guys, because they're outside of this thing, they're people too. But you know what? If there's two guys who deserve it, it's Austin Rivers and Dwight Howard, who, and I know Austin Rivers, as memeable as he's been for the last few seasons, yes, he was a good Clipper. He played hard, for them in the playoffs that one season. We know that. We thank him for that. But at the same time, these guys do it to themselves. And as if the team chemistry wasn't already bad enough, with this the John Wall and Bradley Beal situation, bringing a player like Dwight Howard, specifically Dwight Howard, who is notoriously known as the most least liked locker room presence and has been for the better part of this decade. It's almost like that's the most Wizards thing that the Wizards could have done, was bringing a guy like Dwight Howard in, when they've already got their own issues, and I'm going to jump right to it. That's the biggest question I have for this team, is this Wall Beal situation, which is, we all know we've all been there. We've all had that. We all have that. We all know that one couple who are in a bad relationship, and everyone knows it. No matter how much they act like, oh no, we're fine. You ask them like, hey, how are things? Like, oh no, we're fine. But they're not fine, because when you hang out with them, their body language is bad. They're not nice to each other like they used to. They just, that the relationship is bad, and everyone knows it. But that both of them are just too proud to admit it, or they don't want to be the one who instigates the breakup, because then all of a sudden they'll have that cloud hanging over their head amongst their group of friends or with the ex or whatever. We all know that one couple that's in that bad relationship. That's John Wall and Bradley Beal. We all know that they're in that they don't necessarily they don't like each other off the court. They deal with it on the court. They're both talented players. They're both, they can both, air quotes, run their own team. And it's like I said, the biggest question I have is, will this be the season where the straw finally breaks the camel's back in this relationship? It feels like it might be, and it feels like Dwight Howard might be the kind of person or the type of player to do that, where unfairly in this case, I don't think he'll have any direct implication on it, but just, having a player like him in the locker room that just people don't like, it could just be it could spell disaster. And worst case scenario is Dwight pisses everybody off in this locker room, and it just makes the locker room feel toxic on top of the Wall Beal thing, and part of it, their relationship implodes, and they have to trade one of them, and it just, everything just becomes toxic, and it affects the play on the court, and maybe they miss out on the playoffs or something like that. Like I said, that's worst case scenario, which I don't think it'll be that bad. Like, it literally, like, it has to be one of those snowball Murphy's Law thing where everything just goes, where everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and it's just one of those really, really, really bad, horrible seasons on and off the court for the Wizards. Best case scenario for them is that John Wall and Bradley Beal can put their differences aside for another season, and or for whatever reason, just figure out how to be friends and how to get along with each other. If that can happen, Dwight Howard, who I forgot to mention, is also, on top of being the most disliked player in the league, he's also not healthy. He's got a back injury, and shout out to Jason Concepcion, who had the best tweet about this, and they said nothing is more poetic about this whole Dwight Howard thing than him literally having pain in his ass and being the literal biggest pain in the ass in the NBA. Nothing is more poetic than that. But if Dwight can be healthy, he, as much as I don't like him, he can be a good player. We all know that. And he can be a productive player. And, if he can be healthy and productive, and if John Wall and Bradley Beal can put their differences aside for another season, maybe they can finally make it out of the first round of the playoffs and, give their fans something to cheer about finally. But I don't think it'll be that good, and I don't think they'll be as bad as I mentioned before. I think they'll be somewhere right in the middle, because, they're still running back the same team, essentially. They still have Scotty Brooks as a head coach, trying to coach up John Wall and Bradley Beal. Like I said, they brought in Austin Rivers, still have Otto Porter, and still have Kelly Oubre, still have Markieff Morris, still have Jason Smith, still have Jan Mahinmi. Just a lot of average players. I'm sorry. It is what it is. And like I said, I don't think they'll be as good as I mentioned in the best case scenario. I don't think they'll be as bad as they were with the worst case scenario. I think they'll just be somewhere right there in the middle, and they'll have kind of the same kind of season they had last year. Vegas seems to think the same thing. Their over-under is 44.5 wins when they finished with 43 wins last year. Like I said, it just doesn't. It seems like the Wizards have the biggest season from hell potential out of any team, not just the East, but any team in the NBA. They have the biggest potential for a season from hell, and if it does happen, it definitely will not catch anyone. It will not catch anyone by surprise. That's it. Finally did it. We made it through. Those are all the teams in the East. The playoff teams, I think, that'll come out of the East, I still think it'll be the same teams, like I said, minus the Cavs, and I think the Pistons will take their spots, but in no particular order. I think it'll be the Celtics, the Sixers, the Pacers, the Bucks, the Raptors, the Heat, the Wizards, and the Pistons, like I said, taking the place of the Cavs for the 8 playoff teams, with the Celtics being the best out of all of them and representing the Eastern Conference in the finals. But also, don't be surprised if the Nets are knocking on the door towards the end of the season. Like I said, I'm not sure that they'll make it, but like I said, don't be surprised if they are one of the teams that are frisky enough to be in the playoff hunt. Like I said, that's all I'm going to say there. That's my big, bold prediction from the East there. And that is it, boys and girls. We made it through the East, finally. Don't forget to also listen to the West. I know this was a lot to get through, but like I said, the NBA, we waited for this. This is what we all waited for. So like I said, make sure you listen to both the Eastern and the Western Conference previews. And if you like what you heard, like always, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. SoundCloud, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn. Now officially on Spotify. Shouts to Spotify for finally letting me get on there. So make sure you follow along there and stuff like that. Make sure you follow along on all the socials as well. At Brown Mamba Radio, Brown Mamba, JXCKSXNNN for all my personal stuff too. Everywhere where you get socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Tumblr, and like always, everything is available on the blog. Shout out to the blog boys and the blog girls at brownmama.us. But it's time to get out of here. And don't forget, again, to listen to the Western Conference preview over there on Brown Mama Radio. And hopefully your team does well this season, no matter who it is in the East or the West. Hopefully your team does well. And like always, drink more water. His health is wealth. Be kind to each other. It's easy to be nice. And let's all hope we have a great NBA season. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.